everyone. I'm Angela, one of the Book Festival volunteers. On behalf of the State Library of Louisiana and the Center for the Book Festival, welcome to this program. A couple of requests. Please silence your cell phones, and please, respecting our host rules, no food or beverages are permitted in the spectator area. There will be a book signing at the book tent beginning 15 minutes after this program. All book sales benefit the Louisiana Library Foundation.
Thank you. So it's kind of a weird sensation introducing someone who everyone in the room pretty much knows, but I'm honored to be able to and being asked to introduce John Polk, who is a dear friend and a colleague, someone I respect as a journalist and as a human being so much. And John, as you know, spent 44 years of his life writing for the New Orleans Times Picayune, and will continue to. His name will continue to appear in its pages. But John's an institution in journalism in Louisiana, particularly in New Orleans, and he is one of the most beloved people in journalism in the state. And it's a having published a few of these, I know what a difficult task it is, and what an achievement it is to have a book, and how much it feels like a baby in your hands when you hold it for the first time. So I celebrate it with you, John. It's a beautiful book published by University Press of Mississippi, based on the obituaries that John has written over many years, getting off at Elysian Fields, obituaries from the New Orleans Times Picayune. So please welcome John Polk.
Thank you, Bob. This book took it's like, not unlike Boyhood, it took 34 years to do, as opposed to Boyhood, which took only 12. Now, these are obituaries that I've done, plus 4 funerals. I figured I had to include the funerals, because we have this wonderfully distinctive way of seeing people off in New Orleans, often with music, dancing, and at Lindy Boggs' funeral, the mayor sang Ave Maria, no less. And so, first, definition of terms. What relatives write when someone dies is a death notice. There are all sorts of euphemisms like passed away, crossed the river, and my favorite, the lights went out. But an obituary is something a reporter does. It's in large type, and it is reported. I was on a TV show the other morning when the host said, "You know, the obituaries are so much juicier than what the family writes." And I said, "We call it reporting." I brought my snark with me. I hadn't even had any coffee then. But these are 123 obituaries and 4 funerals. And people, I think this, first of all, this is a wonderful day to be discussing this. I mean, Halloween, for heaven's sake, and it's gloomy outside. And people profess to be queasy about death, but everybody wants his or her friend, lover, relative to be, I hate this term, memorialized when the time comes. Marshall McLuhan had it right. Being mentioned in print validates you. It validates the adventure. It validates the life you lived. And so I like to think that my obituaries are validations of people. And it's a mixture. I have the low-hanging fruit. I have politicians, Mardi Gras monarchs, at least one criminal, and Eudora Welty, Walker Percy, and the man who embalmed Jane Mansfield. But I got them all. But I also have people who are not necessarily bold-faced names, but they are in what I call the warp and woof category, the people who make up the fabric of this quirky metropolis I live in. For instance, there was the doctor who used his own plasma to make his hibiscuses grow. He was being treated for some blood disorder, and he had this bag full of blech hanging from an IV pole, and he said, "What are you going to do with that?" And they went, "We don't know." So he said, "Can I have it?" "Sure." So he took it home, put an IV drip in the ground, and voila, the hibiscuses flourished. As I say 85 times a day, I am not making this up. And then there's a favorite of mine. Brenda Hatfield, who was Mayor Ray Nagin's chief administrative officer, has been a longtime friend. Her father died So she called me about an obituary. Now, her father, William Garibaldi, was a letter carrier. Everyone loved him. That wasn't the whole story. This is how it begins. For 30 years, residents of Carrollton, Mid-City, and Gentilly knew William B. Garibaldi, Jr. as the friendly man who delivered their letters and Christmas packages, swapped stories, and asked about their families. But this mild, methodical man who died Friday at age 84 of a heart attack at Memorial Medical Center had a part of his life that he never discussed during his daily rounds. For nearly 4 years during World War II, Mr. Garibaldi was a spy. One of the few African Americans in the Army Counterintelligence Corps. He investigated illegal trading, helped protect Franklin D. Roosevelt as one of the first black members of the presidential security team, and in the spring of 1944 made sure that news about D-Day wasn't leaking out. He was posted to Liverpool for that stint, and he spent his time before the invasion eavesdropping on conversations in pubs, probably where other black GIs went, to make sure that D-Day was not being talked about. And, I mean, when Brenda got to that point in our discussion, she said, well, he was a spy. Cool. And off we went. But the payoff came at the funeral, when Brenda said people came up to her and her brother and said, you never told us this. She said, you never asked. So that's what I do. I ask. Now, how many of you all know the movie Citizen Kane? Good. Well, you may remember that in Citizen Kane, this man goes around asking people who knew Charles Foster Kane what his last word, Rosebud, might mean as a key to Charles Foster Kane's personality. I look for Rosebud. And people who know me, people whom I've called a lot for obituaries, know, okay, Pope, here's the Rosebud. And some people profess not to know. I mean, this is armchair psychoanalysis. But after a while, they start talking. And it's like the old apocryphal tale about monkeys at typewriters. Eventually, they'll bang out King Lear. And they tumble upon this explanation of the person's psyche. And it is so cool. And they don't know they're doing it. There are, for instance, then there's another favorite, Edward Bud Ripple. Now, this is fascinating for several reasons. I love nicknames. Bud Rip got his nickname from someone everyone called Uncle Pauper. No one knew why. But he owned a saloon in the Upper Ninth Ward in New Orleans that his mother-in-law bankrolled so she'd know where he was at night. So I was talking to his daughter 2 days after he died, and she kept telling stories. And I was laughing hysterically. I said, I'm sorry. I know your father's dead, but damn, these stories are good. She said, it's okay. Keep going. And every December, he collected money from local bars to pay for Christmas baskets of food for needy Ninth Ward residents. There were cans of food and a turkey in each one, his daughter said. But he sent around friends first to make sure that people were really needy. And he served a term in the state legislature. And for years, he kept women out of his bar because he was afraid the rough language might upset them. So they picketed. And it was a cold day. He took pity on them. He invited them inside. And he bought them around. And after a while, one woman said, can you use the bathroom? He said, if you can do it in a urinal, you're fine. I mean, I just kept hearing stuff like this. And the payoff was at the end. Shortly after her father died, she returned to Bud Rip's. At the corner spot where Mr. Ripple always liked to sit, she found an open bottle of beer on a napkin. The little boy maid would not let anybody sit there, she said. I said, who's sitting there? And she said, you know who's sitting there. I knew before she said it. I was so touched. The beer, incidentally, was a Budweiser. What else is Bud Rip going to drink? She said. Mr. Ripple's ashes were put in a brass urn inscribed with his nickname, the years of his birth and death, and these words, this Bud's for you. How could I not laugh? This is wonderful stuff. Marguerite Fox, who's my favorite obituary writer, she works for the Times, says, fate drops these stories in our laps every day. And the more you do it, the more you can feel free with it. Fox, incidentally, had my favorite obit sentence ever. Helen Gurley Brown died. This was on the front page of the New York Times. Mark Fox said, and I quote, she was 90, but parts of her were much younger.
That's true.
Oh yeah, I have no doubt. But the beauty of, well, I know a lot of people in this book or should I say knew a lot of people in this book, which gives you the advantage of imparting character to these folks to make it more than what I call a resume obit, which to me is as stale as yesterday's grits. It's lifeless, pardon the pun. But I want to make this person a living, formally breathing entity. Isler Pope, although we claimed kissing cousinhood, this is the South after all, was a restaurateur. And I watched her for years. I ate her food, watched her for years, and I was able to put her personality in. Although Miss Pope regularly wore jeans and possessed a vocabulary that could peel paint off a wall, she was unmistakably a Southern lady. She spoke in a thick, honeyed drawl, made husky by decades of cigarette smoking, and she turned up her nose at any woman who dared to wear white shoes before Memorial Day or after Labor Day. Although, you know what I'm talking about, although Miss Pope traded on informality, greeting regulars with hugs, women of a certain age were always addressed with a miss before their first names. Once, when a customer entered bearing a camellia from her garden, Miss Pope knew exactly what to do. She fetched a finger bowl and filled it with water so the blossom would float at her table. Born Isle bounds in the Mississippi Delta, Miss Pope grew up in an environment that sounded like a creation of Eudora Welty. Her family was proudly self-sufficient, so much so that when she went to the grocery store at a tender age, she returned home wide-eyed with this announcement: "Mama, you can buy mayonnaise!" Now, Hud Isler was one of the people whose obit I prepared in advance. You have, when there's someone notable and there's more to it, you want to have time. Of course, with an obituary, you never know how much time you have. In Paul Prudhomme's obit, I had 27 years. But I interviewed Craig Claverclef while he still walked among us. Who would have thought Paul Prudhomme would outlive him? But I like these because it gives a picture of what I like to think is a well-rounded picture of the person. Al Copeland, who founded Popeyes, need I say more? 4 marriages, bankruptcy, an amazing lifestyle. Eudora Welty, Walker Percy, I never felt I got him because he was so complex. And Norman Newhouse, who was a representative of the company who owns the paper where I work. He had a story that sounded like something out of Irving Howe's World of Our Fathers, about first-generation Jews in America. And it's great stuff, and you want to get that down. Ashton Phelps, my publisher, sent me to interview his father-in-law, Dr. Homer Dupuy, who had been a king of carnival and a leader of the Francophile community. Lovely man. And I talked my way into his house by saying, "Hi, I'm working on a profile," which I regard as true, because I regard these obituaries as profiles. And we were having a lovely time chatting away. And then he turned to me and said, "When's this going to run?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know." And we just kept on going. But I turned up with a bit of news in that obituary that horrified my publisher. Dr. Dupuy had been in the Army. He was a medic during World War II, I think in Italy. And he got the word that there was an emergency in the VIP tent. He walked in, there was Matthew Ridgway. How many of you remember Matthew Ridgway? Good. Ridgway had a heart problem. And Dr. Dupuy examined him and figured this was no big deal. But he was canny enough to know that if word got out that Ridgway even had a little bit of a heart problem, this could derail his career. So Dr. Dupuy, bless his heart, hid the records, took them home with him, horrified my publisher. But had it not, this is like the George Bailey story in It's a Wonderful Life. Had he not done that, Ridgway would not have been able to succeed MacArthur when Truman fired him. He would not have become Army Chief of Staff. So thank Dr. Homer Dupuy. I told that story to his children at his wake, and they liked it. There are so many, it's kind of weird sometimes when you do an advance of it. I met Edith Stern, a great philanthropist, 3 weeks after I finished her obituary. She was at a party telling stories. I took notes. And then my wife and I walked into a Christmas party uptown. There on a sofa were Sonny Norman, a major arts philanthropist, Judge John Minor Winston, one of the most remarkable judges in U.S. history, and Lucille Bloom, another philanthropist, yucking it up, having a great time. I had written all 3 of their obituaries. I almost had palpitations. And then there was Albert Dent, who was president of Dillard University. My boss, who was a Dillard trustee, was convinced that Dr. Dent was going to die at any moment, so he sent me to interview most of Orleans Parish for this obituary, including Rosa Keller, a wonderful woman, white, whose father had bought Coca-Cola in Louisiana. And she'd been a Dillard trustee. She told wonderful stories, and we had a great time. Well, a year later, Dr. Dent still walked among us. And Rosa toddled up to Diana and me at a party, and she grabbed my arm and said, "We haven't used that obit yet, have we?" Diana got real quiet because she told me she knew I had written Rosa's obit, and that's what she thought Rosa was talking about. As Rosa left, Diana said, "She certainly has a grip on her own mortality, doesn't she?" I said, "She doesn't know." But again, Rosa was a wonderful woman whom I kept collecting string on. And my favorite Rosa story was one that Sybil Morial, the widow of one mayor in New Orleans, the mother of another, told me, that Rosa took the money she had set aside to buy a new made coat to underwrite the suit that desegregated Tulane University. And you just get these vignettes drop in your hand and you're just so grateful. Another such incident, J. Skelly Wright, a major federal judge who desegregated a lot of schools, told me this one. He grew up in New Orleans, and in the late 40s he was a fledgling lawyer at a party on Camp Street, catty corner from the old lighthouse for the blind, which was built like a lighthouse. And he was there with young lawyers having a good time, and these buses were pulling up to the lighthouse for the blind, disgorging blind people for a Christmas party. There were two doors, for white blind people and black blind people. Yes, exactly. And he, whatever the 1940s expression of WTF was, he probably said it. And it just made him start to question the whole social order that he had been brought up in and learned to accept. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, I can't believe I'm hearing this stuff. But you want to make sure that it doesn't die with the teller. So he's in the book, duh. And I'm grateful for these opportunities to meet with these people. As I said, I know a lot of the people who are in the book. And I glory in people like Bud Rip or Ruthie the Duck Girl, who was a French Quarter eccentric who went through the quarter on roller skates wearing a bridal veil and trailed by ducks, talked her onto the Metro section page when she died, because she deserved it. Again, warp and woof. She makes the New Orleans what it is. And people call me when folks die. With things like someone's mother was upset about the wretched nutrition her kids were getting at school. She had no experience running a cafeteria. She took over, ran it for 50 years, and it was brilliant. And then Mercedes Tucker Stamps got instruments. She was African American. She got instruments for kids at black schools. And one day she was at school, and in came a gleaming new piano. They were thrilled until someone said, "Oops, we made a mistake. It's for the white school." Yeah. So you hear these things, and I like to think it sort of combines to put together a pastiche, if you will, of where there's no overall theme except these folks died and they were damned interesting. And I'm a contributing writer now. I hope to keep on doing it. People tell me stuff. I don't know why they do. They will just tell stories.
And they keep dying.
Yeah, I know, that's a growth market. So, does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
Who was the youngest person who died in that book?
Courtney Geruso. Courtney Geruso was 33 years old. She had spina bifida. I had met her when she couldn't move, ever. Even a little bit of movement was painful. She had this really amazing wheelchair. It looked like something out of Star Wars. It was glossy black. She got a master's degree in counseling by the Hardest. Her mother, Judge Robin Geruso, drove her to class, took notes for her, took her tests for her, and Courtney got a master's in counseling. She liked the idea of counseling because she was empathetic as hell, and she also figured she could listen to people all day. She died last year of pneumonia. It's tough to write, for me, I've written so many of these, it's tough for me to write obituaries on people who are younger than I am. She was one. Jamie Shannon was another. He was chef at Commander's Palace for 11 years. He died the day after Thanksgiving when the restaurant critic was on vacation, and it's one of the few obits I've written that I cried over because I knew him. And there was a program on Turner South cable channel. I was in Atlanta in the summer of 2001 at Centers for Disease Control, and each program had half of the program was Jamie fishing, Jamie hunting, Jamie trapping, the other half was Jamie cooking. It was an exuberant Jamie, but I knew he was an MD Anderson fighting for his life. So I couldn't, it's like crack, I couldn't stop watching. Yet I would end each program in tears and call my wife and call T. Martin, who was one of the owners of Commander's Palace, where he was the chef. And then he died, and the day after Thanksgiving is hard to find people, but T and her colleagues rallied. T gave me a wonderful quote. He had magic in his hands, a fire in his belly, and a twinkle in his eye. And it's just, you want to hug people like that. She gave me a great party yesterday for the book. But it's the young ones who are tough because they just haven't a chance. Yes, sir?
What guidelines do you follow when you're writing about a politician who may not have had the most illustrious career? Do you write as if the person were alive and in terms of the balance of negative to favorable information, or do you slant it more favorable because the person has died?
Very good question, Mr. Bridges. We're not writing about the lives of the saints here. This is not hagiography. No, I just lay it out. Bad choice of words. Sorry. But nevertheless, it's Halloween. Give me a break. So, no, I tell the story. Someone told Harry Truman, give him hell. He said, I'll tell the truth. They'll think it's hell. But no, Lewis Johnson died. He was Edwin Edwards' first highway commissioner. When I got the call, bells were going off in my head. Why is this familiar? Why is this familiar? I went back in our library. Turned out he had done time for trying to pass off, I know this is so rare in Louisiana, for trying to pass off political contributions as business expenses. Well, a little while later, the funeral director called and said, the family would like it if you didn't mention any of his public life. I went, okay, thanks for calling. A little while later, his daughter called, her voice trembling. She said, what are you going to print? I said, it's the truth. And I ran it with my editors and my publisher's support in the belief that he had indeed done time. You never know. Karma will come back and bite you in the butt. The obit ran on a Saturday, which is a low readership day. She wrote us a letter to me, to the publisher, and to the legislative editor, telling us what horrible people we were for talking about her father. Well, the letter ran on Wednesday, a high readership day, so everyone knew that her father had done time. So who out there said never run against anybody who buys heat by the barrel? So you got to tell the truth. It's not. When Al Copeland died, talk about fertile field. I wrote about the bankruptcies, the marriage, the divorces, the infidelities. That was a great obit. But in the comment stream, someone said, "You don't put that in an obit." Next comment, Al would have loved it. Al lived large. I mean, I was the one who wrecked his wedding, number 3. In the Orleans Museum of Art, Betty Gallant, our gossip columnist, tipped me off that Al and Luann had gotten married 4 months earlier in Las Vegas. So with the time difference, I had time to call the clerk of court's office, get the license number and the name of the person who performed the wedding, and I confronted Al after this opulent wedding in the Orleans Museum of Art. On Valentine's night, we all sat on silver lame chairs, and the Popeye's corporate helicopter, aka the chicken chopper, was strewing pebbles over us. No one thought that it would stir up the pebbles. We were all just like this. But anyway, I had to confront Al with this, and I said, you know, I have this fact that you guys were actually married 4 months ago. Do you have any comment? I don't want to talk about it. Fine. Thank God he was being videotaped, or else it would have decked me. But I had to go file, but I heard that in the reception, she was saying, "You're going to read that I married her in November. I love her so much, I married her twice." That marriage went down in flames.
The second wife, too, he married her twice.
And then he married number 4 in St. Louis Cathedral, which had tongues wagging because he was Catholic. But marriages 2 and 3 had not happened in the church. marriage number one, his wife was dead, so he was okay to marry in St. Louis Cathedral with a pumpkin coach, for heaven's sake. What do I always say? I can't make this stuff up. Any other questions? Oh, come on. Yes, ma'am.
Is there someone on the bank, or who have you prepared things for in your wedding?
Oh, several. He said occasionally. Not
Jimmy
enough.
Carter.
No, I do. It's mainly local.
Okay.
I had to do Robert Penn Warren from a standing start, which scared the hell out of me. But if there's someone I really like who has at least a tangential connection to New Orleans, like Eudora Welty, okay, since I was published by a Mississippi Press, I thought it'd be politic to include her, although it is my favorite obituary. But, no, I try to, local keeps me awfully busy. I mean, there's no shortage of interesting people, known and unknown, who are dying. Jim Garrison was a challenge. And at the time, Walt Hamilton was our cartoonist and a dear friend. The day the obit ran, Walt's cartoon showed me standing in the newsroom, holding the phone, yelling, "It's Oliver Stone. He's got a theory about Jim Garrison's death." Walt got a call from a woman who said, "You know, that was goddamn tasteless," and Walt went, "Yeah, so." No, I try to keep abreast. My new title at the Picayune is contributing writer. I have not had time to figure out what this entails. I'm supposed to meet with my editor next week. I've been promoting this book. Please buy the book, I'll sign copies. To think about it much, I've done true stories, and then my obit of Paul Prudhomme ran, thank God. I was in a meeting in Denver when someone told me he had died, and I said a most unholy word and ran out of the room to call the desk and said, "Find the obit, it's in this." We've gone through, I think, 3 computer changes, but they found the obit at lead page 1. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Does post-Katrina New Orleans have as many interesting characters as pre-Katrina New Orleans?
Give us time. Give time for more of them to die. I mean, we have Bud Rip was a case in point. I mean, Bud Rip missed 9/11, Katrina, because he sold his bar to someone named Turtle Canaire. And I'm not making this up. But I still find them. So I hope so. Yeah, there are nicknames. I love nicknames. And I take an obituary as my reason to find out where these nicknames came from. Jack Kelleher, for instance. She was a wonderful person. But everyone knew her as Jack, and I might leave with something like Kelleher, who delighted in decorating furniture, teaching nursery school, teaching dancing etiquette, and fighting racism, died. She was a wonderful woman, but her real name was Nellie Mae. But, I know, but she got the nickname because she hung out with girls who gave each other boys' names, and hers stuck. She even named her daughter Jacqueline, for heaven's sake. Well, that's been a lot of therapy. But nicknames are a southern thing, like Moo Moo Chambre. Moo Moo was one of Jim Garrison's investigators. Well, he grew up in the French Quarter in the house where Hal Wallace shot King Creole. And there was a tenant in the building from France who she was trying to say Boo Boo, but it came out as Moo Moo. And we used nicknames. We reveled in nicknames. Anybody else? Thank you very much.